Aldrich.
And I'm Sam Hodgkiss. Our top story today.
You've got a full life ahead of you. Just for the sake of the next few weeks or couple of months, don't throw away bright futures by doing something stupid.
Merseyside's Chief Constable talks exclusively to Liverpool Life. His targets are students who are blatantly breaking the COVID regulations.
We've been throwing parties the last few weeks, so like not every day obviously, but every weekend we'll do something, invite a few people. We've had around at one point 60 people at a party, which I know if the police walked in they'd whack us all a 10 grand fine, but yeah, we've been a bit lucky in that sense.
It's people like this who have left Liverpool's top cop and his officers frustrated and angry.
You're the future leaders of the country. Let's start acting like it.
A clear message directed at what Andy Cook describes as a minority group. Young people, not just students, choosing to ignore what the rest of us are having to obey.
Use your common sense. Follow the guidelines. You've got a full life ahead of you. Just for the sake of the next few weeks or couple of months, work with each other to keep the more vulnerable people across Merseyside and the rest of the UK safe.
Latest government estimates put Liverpool's student population at around 70,000 people strong, the majority of these living in and around the city centre. For many, it's the first taste of freedom they've had in a 6-month lockdown, only to be plunged back into isolation once again. But with Halloween approaching, Mr Cook says he doesn't want a repeat of the scenes we saw a fortnight ago that shamed the city, and that fines will be issued if people break the rules.
Their behaviour was irresponsible, puts the city in a bad light. It was childish. People know what the dangers are, and for the sake of 30 seconds of fame, was it worth it? If people engage with us and do the right thing, we will usually just give a warning. But now that we're in the highest tier, those warnings are less and less, because people should know the rules by now. If you are thinking of hosting a party, if you are going to a social gathering which you know is illegal, you can expect a fine.
It's been a tough 6 months for the Chief Constable and his officers. Crime figures might be down, but there's been little respite for enforcing often confusing government policy with stretched resources.
Not only are we dealing with the crime issues, the missing from home issues, the mental health issues that we deal with on a daily basis, we're also having to deal with the additionality of licensing visits, checking open spaces, being called to numerous calls of people who are allegedly breaching the legislation. That's all on top, and I don't get more police officers to do that, so that means the police officers that you do see and the police staff are working longer hours, they're having less days off, and that puts a strain on my staff as well. At the end of the day, the officers will interpret the legislation that comes through fairly, competently, and like in any part of life, there's always going to be one or two mistakes made. Just understand, they're human error. This isn't police officers wanting to do the wrong thing. It's a mistake, and we all make mistakes. But for the vast majority of the way my staff have dealt with this, I'm really, really proud of them.
And even Mr Cook hasn't escaped the virus himself.
Right at the start of this pandemic, I was unfortunate enough to get coronavirus. Certainly, it had me worried. It had me confined to one room for 2 weeks. Those who say this doesn't exist or that it's all a myth, you need to think again, because I've seen plenty of people in the intensive care unit, plenty of grieving families throughout this pandemic. So the most vulnerable across our society are suffering and dying as part of this. We need to work together to ensure that doesn't happen.
Wes Powell, Liverpool Life.
Club, bars and restaurants in Liverpool have faced a serious risk of closing for good as the Tier 3 restrictions continue to bite. JSM bars own over 30 venues in the city, but have been forced to close all but 3. Our reporter Robin Coolan spoke to Phil Gillespie, marketing manager for JSM bars, about the financial impact on the company.
We feel that we've been scapegoated really by a government that haven't been able to get their policies together with coronavirus, and we've been made an easy target. It's easy for the general public to assume that hospitality, pubs, bars are super spreaders, but it's not borne out by the facts. The government wanted to support the sector by introducing the Eat Out to Help Out initiative, which meant that we actually had to take on more staff. We took them on through the summer, but because now they're shutting us down, it means that any new staff that we had to take on because of the table ordering regulations that were brought in. Now they can't be supported by the job scheme. We employed over 1,000 staff. Now that's less than 200. By next week that could be halved again.
As more jobs are lost due to the closure of hospitality venues, companies could face permanent closure without the funds to help them through the crisis. Robin Cooling, Liverpool Life.
The MP for Wavertree, Paula Barker, has told us the government should be paying for free school meals and not Liverpool Council. Whilst Boris Johnson has defended the decision not to extend the scheme into the holidays, charities throughout Liverpool have been helping to feed those who need it most. Early this week, I visited Liverpool's community market to see what they were doing. The community market at Liverpool Cathedral, run by Mica Liverpool, aims to help the community by selling supermarket goods for cheaper prices at either 20 or 50p. Hannah Clark, volunteer coordinator for Mica Liverpool, explained how a community market works.
Is a way for people in Liverpool to sort of choose their food, and if they're vulnerable of sort of getting to the stage of needing a food bank, it's sort of that sort of preventative measure to help them sort of not get to that stage, and it gives people integrity and choice in what they buy.
Community market is open for everyone, as they want to help people from families to uni students.
We just wanted to let people know that you're not stealing food from anybody. It's genuinely like surplus food that we're selling on to raise money for our charity.
The food on sale would normally be wasted.
Example of the food that we get given, so it's all surplus food that the supermarkets can't sell. So for instance, if you look at this Marmite jar, so the back label's there, but the front's not. So this would have gone in the landfill, which is really sad, and we much prefer to put food in bellies, not bins.
Within 20 minutes of opening, the community market was already having to restock, as customers made the most of the discounted goods. This is Steph Coldrick for Liverpool Life.
Residents in Kensington have said no to more student flats. They're fed up with the amount of homes being turned into shared rented accommodation. For more details on the story, here's Liam Kennedy.
There are growing concerns among residents in Kensington over the number of houses being converted into student homes. This has fuelled problems like overcrowding, noise and antisocial behaviour, whilst also leading to young families being driven out of the local housing market. Local Labour councillor Maria Toolan believes some students' social desires have led to these issues occurring.
Students coming into the neighbourhood, obviously wanting to start their university year, getting to know people, and that's the key, isn't it? It's making new friends. But I have spoken to some students there. I did some door knocking a few weeks ago, and I don't think I think some of them are not aware it's a residential neighbourhood. I think they think it's just a lot of students. So I think there's some naivety maybe.
The Labour Council are planning to take action which will see landlords in the future having to apply for planning permission on all HMOs in order to stop any divide between locals and students. Liam Kennedy, Liverpool Life.
Sport now with our sports editor Ethan Taylor.
Thanks, Steph. Liverpool fans have had their first taste of a pay-per-view game this weekend, yet many were disappointed with paying the fee, so decided to donate to food banks instead. Mia O'Hare reports.
Liverpool fans were introduced to new fees this weekend in their game against Sheffield United. As part of a new pay-per-view scheme, a fee of $14.95 is charged to watch the matches on Sky Sports or BT Sports box offices. Presenter for Redmond TV explains people were unhappy with these changes.
I think in normal circumstances, I don't think $14.95 for a game of football isn't too bad, because you can have your mates around and you can split the cost and you can have a few beers and whatever, but at the moment you can't. So whereas, you've got a lot of people at the moment who, as places move to tier 3, you've got a lot of people at the moment who are either still furloughed, so they're still getting 80% of the wage, or even worse, they're going to be on 2/3 of the wage. And you can't, it's £15 per person or per household, because you can't mix households.
Some Liverpool and Everton fans, including Ben, opted to donate their fee to North Liverpool food banks, raising over £125,000. Spirit of Shankly were one of those calling for this boycott, claiming that it's blatant exploitation of fans.
It's a very good way of responding, because obviously I think the message is that, look, this £15, we can put that to better use. There's people starving, there's people struggling in the current situation. And, why should we, when the option is out there, okay, you've got to work a little bit harder, but if you know the right people, you can find the links for the streams.
Mia O'Hare, Liverpool Life.
Now, if you are angling to take up a new sport, then join the increasing number of people taking to the waterside, with fishing reeling in thousands of new enthusiasts. Sarah Taylor has been catching up on the story.
Fishing, the sport that gets people hooked instantly. Being out in the fresh air and catching plenty of fish, it's no wonder why it's the biggest participatory sport in the country. However, over the past few years, Environment Agency rod licence figures have been slowly declining. From 2015 to 2016, over 1.2 million licences were sold throughout the UK. Yet over time, a steady decline is visible, with less than 1 million being sold last year. But in 2020, the sport has had a resurgence, and the ticket sales are skyrocketing. Between May and June, there was a 230% increase in sales since the start of the year, primarily due to lockdown easing. 4 months on, and business has been booming, with many fisheries continuing to reap the benefits it has brought. Alan Jones, the bailiff for Yew Tree Fisheries in Thornton Hough, explains how successful this year has been.
Considerably busy here, but consider that we've had a 3-month lockdown, and everybody was so keen to get out. It has been very, very busy nearly every single week. The fishing's starting to slow down a little tiny bit, but there are some dedicated anglers out there who've, because they've had a 3-month lockdown, I think they want to make the most of it.
For the sport, an increase means it can continue to thrive for generations, as well as allowing others in the fishing industry to continue a healthy business.
Important-wise, tackle trades, we've got to keep them supported, and in general, keeping basically everybody happy.
There's also been a notable increase in juniors entering the sport. Peter Henry, the Angling Development Manager at the Canal and River Trust, talks about how important the younger generation is to the continuation of the sport.
Well, it's massively important, there's no question about it, not only from the sports point of view. The angling clubs, the average age is getting older and older and older now. We've got a situation where we've got clubs that are now folding because they've got no juniors, nobody coming through. A lot of the old traditional tackle shops are suffering because there's nobody there. None of them are coming through. Juniors are key to the future.
It is crucial that juniors are encouraged for the sake of the sport.
Maybe 2021 will be okay, maybe we'll see an increase in 2021. I think it will plateau, but that's why I was saying we need to capture it now. You know, what's going to happen for the future of the sport at the end of the day.
Liverpool are looking to win their 3rd game in a row since Virgil van Dijk got injured. They face Danish champions FC Midtjylland in the Champions League tonight. Red's boss Jurgen Klopp admits that he doesn't know much about his opponents, but has spent the last few days researching them. Elsewhere in Group D, top of the table Atalanta host Ajax. Leaders Everton have lost in the Premier League for the first time this season. They were comfortably beaten 2-0 by Southampton and had Luca Dean sent off midway through the second half. Everton manager Carlo Ancelotti says that the club will appeal the red card, branding the decision as a joke. The Blues will be looking to bounce back this week as they travel to Newcastle on Sunday. That's all from me. Back to Steph.
Thanks, Ethan. And finally, there are some Halloween celebrations that you can enjoy safely online, with a gang of entrepreneurs keeping those Halloween spirits alive till the real celebrations can take place at a later date, Laura Wooding reports.
Halloween is cancelled for everyone this year, so someone who is following COVID restrictions is putting their celebrations on hold.
Scary.
Toxic TV, home to Video Odyssey, were hopeful to get into the Halloween spirit this year with an interactive and immersive spooky experience at the film studio.
Let's just do something for Halloween again. I mean, we were already quite frustrated here because we couldn't do our Little Shop of Horrors thing, which was quite successful because of the nature of the crowd. So we thought we'd do something that we could live stream and maybe have a very small invited audience to. And we were going to have a band called Scouser Things. We're basically going to have like a little event where they were going to play some tunes, and we were going to have maybe a series of sketches with the demon that you've seen in the trailer.
Although what could be scarier is the new Tier 3 restrictions in place for Liverpool. This event may have to wait.
We don't know when we're going to be able to do that because the guys can't get together and rehearse because of this new lockdown. Although it's very frustrating at the moment, we're determined to do something. Yeah. We just don't know when it is yet.
On a less spooky note, it's clear the new measures can be adapted to, as the new trailer can inspire new ideas at the studio.
But one thing that we are going to do is develop a bit more video content like the trailer. So the chap Nick, who made the Demon, super talented guy from the Wirral, he's made a series of characters, and we're going to actually start working on like a little web series based on those characters that you see in the trailer.
How spooky. That's it for now. For the full interview with Andy Cook, go to JMU Journalism. Good night.
Good night.
Brilliant. Superb team.